It's the 2025 Armed Forces Remembrance Day, a day the nation expresses its gratitude and pays tributes to its ex-servicemen and women who selflessly sacrificed their lives to defend the territorial integrity of Nigeria and other nations. The day has been marked across the country with military parades involving the participation of a Guard of Honor from the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Navy, and the Nigerian Air Force. The peak of all events held was the wreath-laying ceremony done by the Vice President Kashim Shettima at the National Cenotaph in the nation's capital. And now at the iconic National Arcade in Abuja, top government officials in a somber mood participated at the Armed Forces Remembrance Day to honor the unmatched patriotism and sacrifices of the fallen heroes. At the ceremony, Vice President Kashim Shettima, who represented President Bola Tinubu, led top functionaries, including the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Benjamin Kalu, the Chief Justice of the Federation, Kudirat Kekereekun, the Minister of Defense, as well as Minister of State for Defense, the FCT Minister, and all the service chiefs who laid wreaths at the National Cenotaph. Our State House correspondent, Larry Lasisi, reports.
Officers of the Nigerian Armed Forces take their stand in readiness for the 2025 Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebration. In attendance are members of the National Assembly, ministers, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and military officers. The event kicks off with the arrival of Vice President Kashim Shettima, who is representing President Bola Tinubu.
Yeah, 2025!
He then leads dignitaries towards the cenotaph for the wreath-laying ceremony. The last post, a traditional bugle call, is then played by the firing party. And as the last notes die away, prayers are said and a 1-minute silence is observed. It is then time for the wreaths to be laid. The firing of 3 volleys followed. And the pigeons, a symbol of peace, are released. Minister of Defense says it is a day to be thankful.
I have to thank Nigerians for praying day and night for our fallen heroes. So it is really a solemn moment, and we remember those that have paid the supreme price in guiding our country. And this is really an occasion that calls for prayer, for unity.
For the Military Widows Association, they appreciate government's efforts as regards their entitlements.
Well, the federal government have been trying their best. It has a stage, it's stage by stage. It's not that when your husband dies immediately they will give you the entitlement. There is some records that follow. The next of kin, who is to collect this, who is to collect that, they will prepare the paper, and when it is time they will give you. The only thing we're fighting for now is our insurance. The life insurance. They've paid some army people, Navy and Air Force, and some army people are still waiting for their own, and they've assured us that very soon they will pay.
It has been a solemn ceremony, and it's one that reminds us to honor the sacrifices of those who have served, while remembering to appreciate and salute those who are serving now for the progress and unity of this great country. From the National Arcade, Larry Lasisi, Channels Television News.
Well, let's now traverse across the state of the country to see how the Armed Forces Remembrance Day was indeed celebrated.
January 15th is a day set aside to honor servicemen who lost their lives in the line of duty while defending the nation's territorial integrity. In Lagos, the usual spot for the Armed Forces Remembrance Day emblem is the Tafawa Balewa Square, and the state's Deputy Governor Kadri Hamzat is here for the ceremony. He inspects the guard of honor. Next is the wreath laying, and the Deputy Governor leads the Executive Council members and the military personnel. The pigeons are then released to the air.
We all know they sacrificed their lives so that we can all sleep. So it's an honor for them, and we pray for them. And we also use this time to remember, this is the culmination when Mr. President launched this emblem, that Nigerians should also contribute, because those people left people behind. They are widows. So a lot of us, we should take some of the children and be responsible for some of their things.
In neighboring Ogun State, Governor Dakwa Abiodun joins other distinguished Nigerians at the special parade and wreath-laying ceremony at the arcade ground of the governor's office.
These are people that have gone over and beyond to do things that many of us would not ever volunteer to do. And we must also do everything to ensure that this nation, Nigeria, remains one and indivisible. That's another way we can show them love and appreciation.
For Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State, improving the welfare of families of fallen heroes is key. Leading security chiefs and other dignitaries to recognize the fallen heroes at the grand finale of the 2025 Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebration held at the Government House Arcade, Agodi, Ibadan. Governor Makinde stresses the fact that his administration will do its utmost towards ensuring that families of fallen heroes live a befitting life.
The best we can do for them is to keep supporting the ones that are weak amongst them, and also the widows and the children left behind.
On his part, the Kwara State Governor Abdurrahman Abdurrazak stresses the need to always remember the contributions made by the fallen heroes to keep the nation united.
We must never forget those that held us together today. We must never forget their families. Continue to pray for Nigeria. Peace, harmony, prosperity.
The Kaduna State government has donated medical consumables and other items to the 44 Nigerian Army Reference Hospital, where some wounded soldiers are being treated. The state government says the gesture is inspired by the sacrifices of the soldiers towards ensuring the security of Kaduna State in particular and the country in general. Governor Simine Alaye Fubara of Rivers State also joined in marking the 2025 Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebration at an event held at the Isaac Borough Park.
We have fulfilled past promises to the Nigerian Legion, and we will continue to implement targeted policy and programs to improve their living condition.
For the Delta State Governor Sheriff Oboriwori, the 2025 Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebration is an occasion to remember the selflessness, courage, and commitment of Nigerian fallen heroes, as well as to reassure their families that they will never be forgotten.
We want to reassure their families that they will not be neglected. Whichever way we can support them, we want to support the widows and also those in the forefront today. It shows that Nigeria cares.
In Imo State, Governor Hope Uzodinma appeals to Nigerians to continue to support the families of the departed soldiers, while his counterpart in Enugu, Governor Peter Mbah, gave the assurance that government would continue to support the armed forces in its efforts to make the country safe.
Release one and it's flown away. To cushion the effects of loss of breadwinners, the civil populace, especially private school proprietors, should assist by awarding scholarships to the children of the deceased soldiers.
Our support is, of course, complementary to the immense efforts of the federal government. So the wreaths we lay in honor of our fallen heroes are not mere gestures meant for TV cameras. They impose on us an obligation to offer our lifelong of gratitude.
At the Dr. Alex Ekweme Square in Awka, Anambra State, Governor Chukwuma Soludo declared that the government will never forget the selfless service of past and present heroes.
Anambra is grateful. Anambra appreciates your uncommon sacrifice. Anambra will not forget.
As this year's Armed Forces Remembrance Day comes to a close, the expectation is that all promises made to the families of the nation's fallen heroes are kept and that the welfare of those serving should also be prioritized.
In part 2 after the break, we'll have more on the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, plus a major leak at the NNPC manifold in River State leads to a massive fire engulfing Bukuma and Degama local government area. Please stay with us. 5 Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day Parade at the National Arcade in Abuja. A major leak at the NNPCL manifold in River State leads to a massive fire engulfing Bukuma and Degama local government area. And Israel and Hamas reached Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal. Raised concerning remuneration for veterans who have served gallantly over the years, well, in commemoration of the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. Now, the Director, Veteran Affairs, Directorate, Defense Headquarters and Ministry of Defense, Major General Ibrahim Salihu, explained that the issue of wages should not lead to protests by the veterans. Speaking on our breakfast program, the Morning Brief, Major General Salihu explained that no payment can be enough, as serving in the force is indeed a high-risk profession which takes patriotism and sacrifice. Now, as Nigerians honor fallen and living legends, widows of late soldiers and ex-service members are appealing for better welfare and recognition from the government. This was revealed during the Armed Forces Remembrance Day ceremony at the Isaac Borough Park in Port Harcourt, the River State capital. For instance, Mr. Tony Nweche, a member of the Legion who retired in 1999, says he has not received any pension payments for over a year. While the widows of late soldiers lament that amidst their struggles, they do not know how to access the funds made available by the government for their empowerment.
Far away from the comfort of their homes and the warmth of their loved ones, Nigerian soldiers battled the enemy in defense of their fatherland. Sometimes victors, other times they end up as the victims, paying the supreme price. But how about their welfare? Do they get commensurate attention for their sacrifices? What is the plight of ex-servicemen in Nigeria? And how are families of fallen heroes faring? These are questions begging for answers.
The issue of remuneration shouldn't be an issue that will put our veterans in harm's way for them to be on the street protesting. It shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't allow those kind of things to happen, especially when you have a military pension board. So it's advisable that those who are saddled with the responsibility of taking care of this aspect look into it tenaciously and ensure that such payments are disbursed at the right time.
The Armed Forces Remembrance Day is an annual event organized to honor the fallen heroes. The occasion is often characterized by the laying of wreaths by dignitaries at the nation's capital, Abuja, and across the 36 states. While the event is considered a mark of respect for the dead soldiers, their families want more from the government.
Some are 10 years, some are 5 years, 8 years, they have not paid us. They should come to our rescue. Things are not easy for us now, especially our insurance. They have not paid us. We didn't know where to run to, we didn't know what to do.
To date, we are not getting anything apart from the first payment they give us, which we have exhausted it in building the house. So the children are there. So we don't have money for school fees, neither the feeding.
These concerns are also shared by retired soldiers who decry their condition.
The condition of ex-servicemen is backed by a national issue, but that is not what it should be. For those who serve unite the nation should have been taken care of.
The government are not taking care of the veterans. Like this case of insecurity, being they marry in or key in the veterans, I believe this thing have been resolved. But the government are not serious about it.
With some of them battling health challenges and their children still in school, they want the government to improve their welfare.
Taking care of the retirees when they are sick, you show concern by treating them. It doesn't cost too much to treat somebody and make him feel comfortable. Even if he is going to die, let him die in comfort, not as a result of suffering.
The administration of President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima has continued to assure of its commitment to the welfare of the personnel of the Nigerian Armed Forces. And while this gives hope to the soldiers still serving, those who have given their lives, time and energy to serve their fatherland for 35 years are also yearning for care. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Away from the Armed Forces Remembrance Day to talk insecurity from Borno State, an unspecified number of Nigerian military personnel have been reportedly missing in a recent ambush by Boko Haram terrorists in Baga at the fringes of the Lake Chad. A personnel of the armed forces says soldiers were ambushed while trying to recover dead bodies of over 40 residents killed by the insurgents, and several soldiers were shot dead in the gun battle that ensued. A civilian source in Baga said about 50 men, including civilian joint task force, local hunters and young men, went to recover the dead bodies of those killed, but only one person has returned so far. This incident occurred on Tuesday in Baga after an attack that killed 40 residents. There was also an attack in Gwoza which resulted in the death of 6 people. 5 of them are said to be repentant insurgents, civilian joint task force and hunters. Talking budget defense sessions from the federal legislature now, the National Assembly Committees on Information and National Orientation have rejected the 2025 budget of the Ministry of Information and National Orientation. Speaking in separate budget defense meetings, the chairman of both the Senate and House of Representatives committees are of the opinion that the budget of the ministry is too low for the ministry to carry out its mandate. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, reports.
In continuation of its mandate to scrutinize the 2025 budget estimates, the Senate and the House of Representative Committees on Information and National Orientation are meeting with the Minister of Information.
And we observe the
committee is not happy with the amount proposed for the ministry in the 2025 budget estimates.
We feel it is not proper and not acceptable for us to legislate on that proposal that was brought to us. So the Senate Committee on Information and National Orientation unanimously resolved that this budget be returned back. If the government want to fund the information sector in this country, they should live up to the expectation and fund the very, very important sector like information properly so that the expected result will be achieved.
We are going to sit with them to ensure that this particular proposal is looked into and necessary things by shoring it up, by increasing the budget. We will ensure that that is done before the whole budget activities will be concluded. That is our stand, and that is what we want to say for now. The proposal for the capital is being rejected by this committee.
The Minister of Information and National Orientation has assured the committees that he is ready to work with the Parliament to deliver on the task of disseminating critical information to Nigerians.
There is a point raised about pooling resources. It's not for me as minister to request that resources are pulled from other places to bring to me. All I want is the resources for me and my agencies and members of staff, everybody in this sector to do his job. It is the responsibility of the National Assembly to look at whatever it thinks it is necessary for it to do, so that we can have the enabling environment to do our job.
The current budget of the ministry in the 2025 appropriation bill stands at 8.7 billion naira. Dilio Moyeni, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly has raised the revenue target for the Federal Inland Revenue Service following revelations by the chairman of the service, Mr. Zach Adeliji, that it had surpassed its 2024 target of 19.4 trillion naira. During the presentation by Mr. Adeliji on the agency's performance and future projections, the National Assembly Joint Committee on Finance proposed 25 trillion revenue target for the FIRS in the 2025 fiscal year. Our National Assembly correspondent, Gloria Mizuke, now reports.
Revenue came yesterday.
After a series of meetings and budget defense sessions, it's the turn of the Federal Inland Revenue Service and the NNPCL.
Work done so far, and then thank you also.
The FIRS boss makes his presentation.
We have collected 21.6 trillion, which is the highest in the history of the country. This is 112% more than the target, and roughly 80% more than what we've collected last year.
The Chief Executive Officer of the NNPCL also makes a submission on his 2024 revenue performance.
September 2025, as you call Mr. Chairman, we're a private company, so we do quarterly accounts. And by the end of September, I can confirm to you that NNPC's contribution is 10 trillion naira of revenues to the Federation.
Order presentation.
There was, however, a more dramatic scene at another session with the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development.
9 pages.
It all began when the minister gave an update on the Renewed Hope Housing Scheme and the National Housing Scheme.
A total of 7,522 housing units spread all in 35 states of the Federation and FCT have been under construction, out of which 3,388 units are completed. I represent Bank State. I don't know where you are doing this project. I have no knowledge at all on this renewed work agenda. I am talking details to Nigerians. Do Nigerians know about some of these things?
At this point, his colleague intervened and the situation degenerated into a war of words.
The capital project was extended by Senate for another 6 months. So there's enough time to report on progress on the renewable agenda housing project. But it is not that Nigerians don't know, or we don't know, or it's not in the budget that is present, or that work is ongoing.
For several minutes, they bickered before calm was restored. The grilling continued as another lawmaker, expressing confusion, sought more clarity on the federal government's housing scheme.
There's some confusion between your 4.0, where you are talking of status of Renewed Hope Agenda Housing Scheme, and then shortly below it, 4.1, you are talking of status of National Housing Program. There's some confusion as to whether we are talking of the same program or we are talking of two different programs run by your ministry.
I would allow my directors to respond to this, especially the difference between the Renewed Hope Agenda Program and the National Housing Program. I'm still also here to understand the difference between the two.
Chairman of the committee, Senator Aminu Tambuwal, then excused the Minister of State, directing him to return on Tuesday next week to provide a more detailed submission to the committee. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, and of course, after the break, Nigeria's headline inflation rises to 34.8% in December, driven by festive demand. Well, that will be on Business News. Please join us again. Welcome back. Away from the budget defense sessions and in Rivers State, natives of Buguma in Asari Toro local government and Bukuma in Degema local government have appealed to the federal government to put pressure on the NNPCL to clean up their environment and compensate them. This followed a major leak at the NNPCL's manifold, which has led to a massive fire engulfing the area around the community. The crude leak, which has been on for a month, has now led to a fire which has been burning for days. Our correspondent Charles Operum reports.
It's a long trek from Buguma town in Asari Toro local government area to the riverbank, just across from where a raging fire blazes.
The fire you see is burning at the Bukuma manifold. It is part of the NNPCL Shell joint venture, which is part of the oil mining lease 15. Indeed, if you look very closely, you'll discover that one fire is burning and there is another one that has just started. It's out of view. It's covered by the trees, but you can see the smoke coming out of there.
This is the Bukuma manifold, which is a part of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited's oil mining lease OML 15. A youth leader accuses the military of being responsible for causing the leak, but asks the federal government to clean up their environment as he shows us the extent of the damage to the water.
Oil theft and illegal refinery was at its lowest ebb. But all of a sudden, we saw a military-grade helicopter shooting in this axis, sporadically shooting at a very low altitude. Then the following morning, we noticed crude. The federal government to immediately stop the fire and do remedial action. We also want a thorough cleanup of the environment.
Midway through our stay there, we notice another fire breakout not far from the first one, with the natives raising further alarm about the risk to the adjoining communities.
Right now, there's another outlet of fire. Just as we are here to report the fire on the manifold, we can see another, a new set of outbursts of fire. And it is moving into the community.
A member of the Bukuma community who says he was present when the fire started alleges that it was an accident from the technical repair crew.
The crane was dragging something from the well to bring it out. What we saw was a spark. That's how came the fire. It was a spark that causes the fire.
When contacted, the information officer of the Nigerian Air Force Special Operations Group 115, Flight Lieutenant Anna Eondoaka, told Channels Television that the Nigerian Air Force is investigating the allegation to ascertain the veracity or otherwise, and gave assurances that the public will be furnished with the findings. Channels Television also contacted the Director General of the Nigerian Oil Spill Detection Response Agency, Mr. Emeka Woke, who claims that he was yet to be briefed about the situation, but promised to get back to us on the matter once he gets the details.
Let's now head to the nation's capital now, where Gloria Umezoke is standing by to give us the latest from our Abuja studios. Hello, Gloria. Over to you.
Well, many thanks, Ayo. President Bola Tinubu is assuring the global audience in the United Arab Emirates that Nigeria is ready to work with other nations to build a resilient, equitable, and sustainable world for all. President Tinubu spoke on the second day of the 2025 Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week on the theme Climate Imperatives into Economic Prosperity, Bridging Africa with the Global Energy Future. He declared that no single nation can walk the road to sustainability alone, noting that global interconnectedness demands collective action, knowledge sharing, and mutual support. In Edo State, the Election Petition Tribunal has adjourned hearing till Friday, January 17, in the petition before it by the People's Democratic Party and its governorship candidate, Mr. Asue Ighodalo, challenging the result of the September 21st governorship election in Edo State, where Monday Okpebolo of the APC was declared winner. The chairman of the tribunal, Justice Wilfred Okpuchi, had granted the request of the PDP's lead counsel to get a schedule for all documents to be tendered before fielding its witnesses on Friday. While speaking to journalists at the end of the day's proceedings, Mr. Ighodalo says he is focused on reclaiming his mandate in spite of distractions outside the court.
So far, so good today, and we're glad with how things have gone. There are certain house cleaning things that have been done as regards to documents, and those will be done today, tomorrow. But I want to use this opportunity to truly thank the good people of Edo State for having come out in massive numbers, in the rain, in the difficulties, to vote for us on the 21st, and for keeping faith and staying true with us, and for keeping up hope. And then they've been very calm in the face of intimidation, in the face of harassment in the last 3 months. They've stayed faithful and they've stayed with us, and they're living on strong hope, and I'm truly thankful to them. We strongly believe that the judiciary will do the right thing. There are many things that are being thrown by way of distraction to take our eyes off the ball. Eyes on the ball of ensuring that we go through the tribunal proceedings effectively. At the end of the day, we reclaim our mandate and we're able to work positively for the good people of Edo State, and like we've said, remove poverty from our land, take Edo State to the next level. And I'm hopeful that by the grace of God Almighty, we'll be given the great opportunity, Osarojin Ogie and myself, to take Edo State to the next level, to make our people be happy, live well, live happily, to make our people take poverty away from the land, take intimidation, take harassment, take lion, tiger, Agbero kind of living, take fear out of our land. You know, Edo State is a state blessed awesomely by God, and by God's grace, we'll be given the opportunity to bring out the great potentialities of the state.
Well, still from Edo State, the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressives Congress have continued to trade words as the Edo Election Petition Tribunal commenced hearing on the petitions challenging the governorship election, where Monday Okpebolo of the APC won. According to a statement signed by the APC chairman in Edo State, Mr. Jared Tenebe, he claimed that the shooting incident within the venue of the governorship election tribunal in Benin City involved members of the opposition PDP, insisting that it is a deeply disturbing and unacceptable act of violence. He adds that the tribunal is a sacred space where justice is meant to be administered impartially. Reacting to claims made by the Edo APC over a shooting incident outside the court earlier today, the chairman of the Edo PDP Caretaker Committee, Mr. Anthony Aziagbemi, refuted the allegations, saying the video was orchestrated. He insists that the APC are clearly scared of justice and have continued their devious ploy to frustrate his party, the PDP, from reclaiming the mandate given by the people of Edo State in the last governorship election. The Federal Capital Territory Administration is promising to ensure that anyone that pays for certificate of occupancy gets the document within 2 weeks. The Senior Special Assistant to the FCT Minister on Public Communication and New Media, Mr. Larry Olayinka, made this disclosure during a press briefing on the recently signed 5,000 certificates of occupancy in Abuja. Mr. Olayinka explains that the land allottees whose CFO are ready for collection will begin to receive auto-generated SMS within the next few weeks. In a significant development in its legal battle with General Hydrocarbons Limited, First Bank of Nigeria PLC has obtained a court order from the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt to seize and detain a cargo of crude oil aboard the FPSO Tamara Tokoni. Justice Emmanuel Obile, in his ruling on January 9, mandated that the crude oil cargo be held until General Hydrocarbons provides a substantial bank guarantee of $19.7 million, inclusive of interest and legal costs that the company is owing the bank. The Nigerian Navy has since enforced this court order, effectively detaining the cargo. The FPSO Tamara Tokoni, owned by the Century Group, is currently stationed at a production site operated by General Hydrocarbons. First Bank of Nigeria PLC initiated legal action to recover an outstanding debt of $225.8 million, which it claims General Hydrocarbons owed as at September 30, 2024. Well, that's it from the nation's capital. It's now over to Will Ibong in Lagos for business news.
Thank you, Gloria. Now, Nigeria's headline inflation has experienced a slight increase, reaching 34.8% in December 2024, as reported by the National Bureau of Statistics. This marks a marginal rise of 0.2% from November's 2024's rate of 34.6%, and this is primarily driven by increased demand for goods and services during the festive season. Core inflation also rose to 29.28% in December from 28.75%. However, the food inflation rate declined in December 2024 to 39.84% from 39.93% in November. Now, the rise in food was caused by increases in prices of tubers, alcohol, grains, and fish. Meanwhile, the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, CPPE, says inflation remains a challenge for the country as the 0.2% rise in December inflation rate highlights ongoing economic pressures. The CPPE Chief Executive, Dr. Mudar Yusuf, is, however, hopeful for 2025 inflation outlook, citing reduced exchange rates, volatility, improved reserves, and easing geopolitical tensions. The CPPE boss advises pausing monetary tightening to ease business costs. The CPPE also warns against arbitrary revenue targets for ministries, departments, and agencies, which it says could raise fees, fuel inflation, and deter investments. Now, the latest report from OPEC shows that Nigeria's crude oil production for December 2024 remains steady at 1.49 million barrels per day. However, the Vice Chairman of the African Energy Council, Dr. Chinandikwa, raises concerns over low demand, fueling lower prices as output increases. Dr. Dikwa was a guest on Business Incorporated.
I think a couple of things for us to take away as Nigerians. First thing is huge kudos for the fact that we have been able to grow the oil price in the last 18 months from about 1.1 million barrels per day. I think you can argue around sort of February of 2023, 1.1 million barrels per day, to where we sit today about 1.49. It's been a massive increase, 30% you can argue, and that's very significant. What that means ultimately is we have a lot more revenue coming into the purse, and it gives a lot of confidence to investors. How have they been able to do that? Operation Delta Sanity, the special operations there, in the Niger Delta. There is an opportunity for us to further increase the oil supply, but what does that mean for price? If there's an oversupply in the market for this year, like we're talking, if demand is low and supply is high, price potentially will come down. So there could be a penalty there. We don't know where you would sit, but certainly I think we're looking at weaker oil prices for 2025, potentially around the $70 per barrel mark all through the year, I would say. But of course, an increase in production will be very healthy for the country.
And from oil, we'll head to the domestic stock market, which knocked a 3-day losing streak in today's session. Ladi Williams is here with the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. It's another day, another big drop in Nigeria's stock market. That's for the all-share index. 1.47% drop, losing the 103,000 level. That's for the all-share index. Market cap 62 trillion. The market mover today, and the bears, they pounced again on Dangote Cement. An analyst I spoke to said maybe it's just investors who have been wanting to exit the stock, or investors anticipating the impending entrance of Chinese into the market. Remember, Chinese cement giant Huaxin Cement, they bought an 83.8% stake in Lafarge Africa from Holcim there. But who knows? It could be anything, at this point. But we're seeing huge profits again from yesterday into today. Let's look at the sectoral performance now. I would see FBNH and Zenith Bank, they were up today out of the fugas, helping the banking counter rise by marginal, about 2 basis points. Oil and gas looking better. Consumer goods looking best there, almost 1% gain for that counter. So from an Over 1% drop yesterday to 1.47% drop today. Year-to-date gains goes red.
Thank you, Ladi. Let's hope for a rebound tomorrow. But let's see how other major equities performed today. And that's the much you can take on business. It's back to Ayotunde for the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you so much, Will. Israelis are expressing cautious optimism that a deal on a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and the release of hostages held there is close after 15 months of devastating war. Qatar's foreign ministry spokesman said on Tuesday that there were no major issues blocking the deal between Israel and Hamas, and that the indirect talks in Doha were focused on the final details of reaching an agreement. It's Simon Hughes with more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Israel and Hamas have reached a ceasefire deal to end 15 months of war in Gaza. Here, Egypt's Al Qareha news channel confirming the reports. The deal follows months of talks with Qatar, one of the key mediators. There were celebrations in the streets of Gaza upon the news. It's thought groups of hostages will be released every week in exchange for the return of hundreds of thousands of Gazans back to their homes. Hamas attacked southern Israel on the 7th of October 2023, killing around 1,200 people and taking 251 people back to Gaza as hostages. The attack triggered a massive Israeli offensive on Gaza, during which more than 46,000 Palestinians have been killed, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Moments after a deal was announced, the US President-elect Donald Trump said, "We have a deal for the hostages and that they will be released shortly." Yoon Suk-yeol has become South Korea's first sitting president to be arrested after investigators scaled barricades and cut through barbed wire to take him into custody. Just before dawn on Wednesday, a huge team of investigators and police arrived at his residence in central Seoul, armed with ladders to climb over buses blocking its entrance. Other officers in the arrest team, which numbered around 1,000 people, scaled walls and hiked up nearby trails to reach the presidential residence. After several hours, authorities announced that Mr. Yoon had been arrested. He is being investigated on charges of insurrection for a failed martial law attempt on December the 3rd. He has also been impeached by Parliament and suspended, but will only be removed from office if the Constitutional Court upholds the impeachment.
All of these homes were just leveled.
Winds that have fanned wildfires in the US city of Los Angeles are again expected to kick up on Wednesday after a 25th death from the fires was confirmed. Forecasters have again identified an area of extreme fire danger, emphasizing the risk level in a region to the northwest of the city center. In some mountainous areas, it is possible for winds to reach speeds of 70 miles per hour, which would be nearly hurricane force. The anticipated increase in speeds threatens to spread the remaining 4 blazes, which firefighters have made further progress in tackling during a few days of calmer conditions.
3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff. Go.
2 lunar landers built by private companies in the US and Japan have left Earth on board a SpaceX rocket as part of a rideshare to the moon. The Falcon 9 took off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, carrying landers belonging to America's Firefly Aerospace and Japan's iSpace. The landers will eventually separate once they reach the moon's orbit and conduct independent explorations. They are the latest in a growing number of commercial missions to the moon. Firefly's rover, Blue Ghost, is expected to take about 45 days to reach the moon once it has separated from the SpaceX rocket. Drone footage released by authorities in Massachusetts shows the rescue of a dog and its owner after they both fell through the ice of a frozen lake. In a video posted on the police department's social media, rescuers from the local fire department can be seen crawling along a tether line towards a hole in the ice next to an empty rowing boat. After pulling the owner of the dog to shore, rescuers returned and managed to rescue the canine. And the circus has been to the Vatican to delight Pope Francis during his weekly general audience. At the end of the audience, the Pope applauded the performance of the Roni Roller Circus troupe, which featured clowns, acrobats, and even a dog, to which the pontiff threw a tennis ball. Last week, performers of another troupe, Cirque Africa, entertained the faithful in the Paul VI Hall at the Vatican.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. The home-based Super Eagles, popularly known as the Chan Eagles, have been drawn in Group D of the African Nations Championship. The Chan Eagles, who are making a return to the biennial tournament after a 6-year absence, will square off against Senegal, Sudan, Congo, Brazzaville in Group D. Group D is the only one that has 4 teams, while the other 3 groups have 5. The tournament, which was scheduled to hold in February, has now been postponed until August. And Manchester United coach Ruben Amorim says the pressure to deliver can be the key to turning the Red Devils season around. Amorim's team looks to end a 4-match winless run in the Premier League when they face bottom side Southampton. 2 months into the Portuguese manager's tenure, United sits 14th in the league, and despite flashes of brilliance, the lack of consistency has the coach worried.
But understanding that they are different games and people expect us to win, and that changes things. When you have the pressure to win, that is the pressure that we want, and sometimes it's harder to cope with that pressure, because against Arsenal and Liverpool no one was expecting us to beat that teams, but now it's different, so we have to be prepared for that pressure. We need that pressure to improve as a team, and we need to face the game in the right way.
And in the English Premiership result, Aston Villa secured a 1-0 victory over Everton at Godsend Park, courtesy of a goal by Oli Watkins to deny David Moyes a win on his return to the Toffees dugout. Elsewhere, John Felipe Mateta and Mark Guehi got on the score sheet as visiting Crystal Palace beat Leicester City 2-0 at the King Power Stadium. At St. James's Park, Newcastle put up a near-flawless performance to beat Wolves 3-0, with Alexander Isak scoring a brace and Aaron Gordon getting a goal as well. And Arsenal also won their match by 2-1. And in tennis, Novak Djokovic surpassed Roger Federer for the most Grand Slam singles matches played on his way into the Australian Open third round. Djokovic faced stiff resistance from fearless Portuguese qualifier Jaime Ferrari before winning 6-1, 6-7, 6-3, 6-2 in 3 hours on Rod Laver Arena. The 10-time Australian Open champion is through to the Melbourne third round for the 17th time in 20 appearances. And 2-time champion Naomi Osaka rallied from a set down to defeat Karolina Muchova 1-6, 6-1, 6-3 in the second round of the Australian Open. Osaka overcame a slow start to Real in last year's US Open semi-finalist to advance to the third round at a Grand Slam for the first time since her return from maternity leave. Osaka finished with 33 winners to 27 unforced errors, while Muchova hit 27 winners to 29 on forced errors. That's sports. It's back to you, Ayo.
And the main news again. It's been a solemn and thoughtful mood as the nation stood still in honor of patriotism and sacrifices of falling